Joining us now for further analysis on this story, we have Dr. Myong-hyun from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. It's good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, according to this report, North Korea is continuing to expand its nuclear program despite promises made by Kim Jong-un. I mean, let me get your take on this report. I mean, is this information credible, and are you surprised at all?
Well, first of all, it's probably credible. I mean, I think we have a very strong photographic evidence that North Korea is further expanding its long-range missile launch facilities. But on the other hand, this is really North Korea cheating the United States. I actually beg to disagree on that. It's about, in the sense that the level of dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang hasn't really reached the stage in which the two sides are going to agree to dismantle actual missile facilities. We are well away from that yet. So, but then what concerns me at this point is that the fact that North Korea is still investing in this kind of long-range missile capability, despite the fact that it's actually planning to dismantle them eventually, according to what their leader, Kim Jong-un, has expressed, it's actually quite concerning, because if North Korea is really expecting to dismantle these facilities because they expect to reach some sort of agreement with the United States, then they shouldn't invest in this kind of stuff. So in that sense, I think North Koreans themselves have a low expectation on meeting actually reaching an agreement with the United States. So in that sense, it's actually a negative sign.
Sure. I mean, it would be a waste of money, especially since they still do have economic concerns that they have right now. I mean, the economic situation isn't great, is it?
Exactly. So, I mean, given the economic situation, they should be putting priority on economic development, and also that's the reason why they are trying to negotiate with the United States. And then, their behavior should be influenced by their expectation. So this kind of behavior shows that their expectation about reaching on a positive agreement with Washington is actually lower than we think.
Well, all this is concerned with the actual negotiations between North Korea and the US, because Kim Jong-un has said they will work towards denuclearization. And so he's possibly going back on his word, it seems. But when previous reports like this have come out, US President Donald Trump has said, actually, we've known about this the whole time. It's nothing of concern, and, this doesn't change anything. Do you think he'll come out with a similar response?
Definitely. I think President Trump is expecting to have another meeting with Kim Jong-un sometime early next year, and he has said that publicly. And he's trying to avoid any sort of bump along the way before the meeting actually materializes. But I think, though, for the rest of the administration officials, this sign again points towards the fact that North Korea's expectation, their own expectation about a dismantlement, is actually not that great. So I think that's going to influence the American administration's position towards negotiating with North Korea for complete denuclearization. So overall, this is not a major negative development, but I would say this is not a good thing for the success of the negotiation.
Well, I guess this just adds more fuel to Trump's critics, who say, that this negotiations aren't going well. I mean, he's going to feel more pressure, isn't he?
Well, I mean, but on the other hand, it's about negotiation. So, I mean, so there's the fact that, this kind of facilities are not, they are yet to be put on the table for discussion. So Trump hasn't really promised anything in exchange for North Korea dismantling any kind of this kind of facilities yet. So in that sense, it's too soon for the critics to jump on President Trump and criticize him for being naive about North Korea. I mean, he could be naive on a lot of different things, but we haven't reached the fundamental stage yet.
Well, I guess it's not all bad news, because although negotiations between North Korea and the US have stalled for a while, there has perhaps been a slight breakthrough, potentially. Reports over the last few days have suggested that the CIA Korea Mission Center chief, Andrew Kim, met with a senior North Korean official at Panmunjeom on Monday. Now, it hasn't been officially confirmed, and the reports do vary in detail, but it looks like some sort of meeting might have taken place. I mean, what do we know so far about this?
Well, this is actually supposed to be a secret meeting, so chances that whatever information that comes out about that meeting is not going to be super reliable. But what I can say is that given the circumstances that President Trump wanting to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un early next year, the reason why Andrew Kim, the center chief, came to Korea again is because he wants to actually make progress in terms of dialogue about arranging that meeting early next year between Kim Jong-un and Trump. So probably the whole meeting was really about finding out whether North Korea is ready for the second summit.
Well, we'll have to see how that develops as well. Let's turn to some of North Korea's other activities as well. I mean, they've been very busy in reaching out diplomatically to other countries. North Korea's Foreign Minister, Ri Yong-ho, has been busy with his tour of countries in the last few days, Syria, Vietnam, and also he's now in China, meeting with Beijing officials. I mean, among all this, I mean, first, let's talk about the China-North Korea relationship. Where does that stand right now, especially in light of all this U.S. negotiations as well?
Well, clearly China wants to remain influential in the peninsular affairs, and they want to be perceived to be that way, so by the international media, and the international community. So, more meetings that they have, China has with North Korea, it's good for China. So they definitely welcome these kind of meetings. And on the other hand, China wants to see whether North Korea is going to change its position regarding denuclearization. They want to be informed whether about the North Korea's next move. So I think China, I don't think China is going to pressure North Korea too much in that regard, but I think China wants to remain around the edges of the negotiation so that it can take the next action depending on the changes in the situation.
And as I said, North Korea's foreign minister has been touring these countries. Also, North Korea's head of state, the nominal head of state, Kim Jong-un, has also been to Cuba, Venezuela, and Mexico in the last few days. So a lot of countries that these North Korean officials are visiting. Is this out of the norm? And why are they doing this kind of tour?
Also, there are two ways to think about this. One way is that this is a continuation of the diplomatic blitz that North Korea has been conducting ever since they came out from the shadow, so to speak, earlier this year, and reach out to Seoul and Washington for dialogue. So we can say this is an extension of the momentum. But at the same time, we can also read this in a different way, which is the fact that North Korea is visiting the capitals of other countries that are formerly or still allies of North Korea, such as Syria, Venezuela, and Mexico is not in between. But then, so these are the countries that used to be very friendly with North Korea. So we could say that North Korea maybe is preparing for the next year's diplomatic front. The reason why they are essentially making sure that their friends remain on their side if the negotiation with United States, doesn't go the way that they expect. So it's possible for North Korea to find out, where they're friends and whether their friendship remain as good as ever.
Now, on the other side of the alliance, South Korea and the U.S. have also held a meeting in the last day or so. So South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa is meeting with her U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. What do you think will be on their agenda for the meeting?
So I don't think there will be a major surprise in the meeting between Minister Kang and then Secretary Pompeo. Minister Kang is in Washington not for a high-level discussion or like a critical discussion about the negotiation. She's there to pay condolences over the passing of the former President George W.H. Bush. That's the main purpose, actually a protocol purpose that she's there. But then I think she's meeting with Secretary Pompeo to discuss, basically to be on the same page regarding the negotiation with North Korea, as well as the working of the U.S. ROK working group regarding the sanctions.
Let's move on to another potential development that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Rumors continue to circulate that Kim Jong-un will be coming to Seoul before the end of the year. Seoul has officially, they've denied that there's anything confirmed. They've said, they've stressed, for example, Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon on Wednesday said there was no sufficient signs yet on either side that this visit would happen. But still, the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Do you think that Kim Jong-un really could visit Seoul before the end of the year? And if not, then why do you think all these rumors are circulating?
Well, clearly, there's always a chance that he might come down south from Pyongyang, though it's not that far from here. So it's clearly a possibility, but I would take Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon's word at the face value. Nothing is confirmed yet. So, but then on the other hand, we still keep, as you have pointed out, we keep hearing about the potential like a scenario about in which Kim Jong-un will visit sometime next week or a week after that. So in order to make a prediction about it, actually we have to look at the preponderance of evidence for his visit and against his visit. At least from my point of view, and personal subjective point of view, the weight of the evidence points against his visit within this year. The reason is because, first of all, if that's really the case that he wants to come to Korea before the end of the year, North Korea would have sent a pre-visit delegation to make sure that the security is okay and all the ceremonies and all that have been arranged. We haven't heard anything about the pre-delegation from North Korea coming to Seoul to make such arrangements. That's one reason. And another reason is, I'm actually skeptical about the meeting taking place right now before the U.S. DPRK meeting. Because U.S. DPRK meeting, which is supposed to take place next year, it's going to be more important to determine the agenda for the Kim-Moon summit. So without U.S. DPRK summit being clear whether it's going to take place, when or where, there's not much of a gain for Kim Jong-un to come to Seoul and then have a meeting with President Moon.
So unlikely for now, but we'll have to keep a look on that. Final topic before you go as well. South Korea's inspectors went to North Korea over the last week to inspect North Korea's railway lines, specifically the Western Gyeonggi line. A different group will be going back again to inspect the Eastern Donghae line as well. But they've come back and they've concluded anyway, the first group has, and said the railways look good and they haven't changed much over the last 10 years. I mean, what is your takeaway so far of these railway inspections and what can we see ahead?
Well, clearly North Korea needs a major infusion of capital to prop up its dilapidated infrastructure, and especially in transportation. North Korea relies on trains or railroad for 90% of its cargo transportation as well as passenger transportation. So it's very important for them to receive some sort of a new investment to repair and possibly rebuild their railway infrastructure. And that's the reason why South Korea sent the fact-finding team right now, and which came back. But then what they have found is actually not that surprising. North Korea, it's been 10 years since last such a fact-finding mission took place from South Korea. And the fact that they haven't really found a major deterioration, it's not surprising because it actually has crumbled already. So I would say that, this is a very important mission because that's going to give us the numbers that we need, such as the amount of capital we need to repair and bring up the standards in North Korea railway to the same as like South Korea or elsewhere in the world.
Of course, and they also have the groundbreaking ceremony, which is set to take place before the end of the year. We'll have to see how that turns out as well. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thank you for coming on the show, as always.
My pleasure.